In a quiet corner of the animal shelter, a lonely cry echoed from a small kennel. Charlie, a sad-eyed cat, wept softly, grieving the family that had left him behind. He didn't understand why. Neither did they. His owners had been heartbroken, but Charlie's pain ran deeper than they could have imagined. One morning, Dr. Scott White was doing rounds when he paused by Charlie's kennel. The cat lay curled up, his cries now just faint echoes. Something on the collar caught Scott's eye. He leaned in, squinting at the tag. "No way," he murmured, reaching for his radio. "Emma, can you come here a sec?" Moments later, Emma stepped into the room, glancing at him, then at the cat. "What's wrong, doctor? White?" she asked, concerned. Scott kept his eyes on the collar. "The woman who dropped him off? You said her last name was Carter?" Emma nodded slowly. "Yeah, Grace Carter. She said the cat's name was Francis. Why?" Scott hesitated. "Because that's not what it says on the tag." Charlie had been inconsolable since arriving. Grace Carter, the widow of his previous owner, had brought him in with trembling hands and teary eyes. She said he only responded to Francis. The family had done their best, but in the end, they couldn't care for him. "If we can, we'll come back for him," Grace had whispered as she left, dabbing at her cheeks. Scott had placed Charlie in a kennel himself, watching as the cat pressed against the wall and cried like he'd lost everything. He'd seen animals grieve before, but never like this. Later that day, Scott returned. "I'm gonna check on Charlie," he told Emma, a strange feeling still gnawing at him. In the kennel, Charlie had his paws over his face, hiding from the world. Scott knelt, speaking softly. "Hey, buddy." The collar was still there. He reached for it carefully. "It's time to take this off, huh?" But Charlie hissed, sprang back, and swiped at him with sudden fury. Scott froze, arms raised. "Whoa, okay, all right." He blinked, stunned. "Why won't you let me take off your collar?" He'd caught a glimpse of the tag again. It wasn't right. Something was off. He shook his head. "Maybe I'm just tired." But doubt crept in. "Hey, Charlie, it's okay," he said, voice gentle as a breeze. Charlie hissed again, defensive and scared. Scott backed off, sighing. This wasn't normal grief. Charlie wasn't just sad, he was protecting something. Scott stepped out and returned minutes later with a treat and a small toy. "Let's try this again." He placed the treat near the kennel door and waited. Charlie eyed him warily, then crept forward. He sniffed, took the treat. Good sign. Scott smiled, sitting quietly nearby. He started talking, stories about his own pets, gentle words filling the room like warm light. Slowly, Charlie relaxed. The tension in his little body began to ease. Another treat. A bit closer. Scott leaned in again. "Come on, bud. Just let me see." Charlie lifted his head just enough for the tag to catch the light. Scott's breath caught. "Oh my God!" He stared. The name on the tag was not Francis, not Carter. It was something else entirely. He scrambled to his feet, calling out, "Emma, can you come in here?" She arrived quickly. His urgency was obvious. "What happened?" Scott pointed at the tag. "Do you remember Grace's full name? Are we absolutely sure the last name was Carter?" Emma frowned. "I can check the intake form. Why?" "Because," he shook his head, "that name isn't on the tag." Emma blinked. "Wait, what?" "I don't know what's going on," he admitted, "but something doesn't add up. I'll be right back." She turned on her heel and headed for the files. Scott stayed behind, trying again to get a clearer look at the tag, but Charlie kept shifting, the tag scraping against his fur like a secret trying to stay hidden. It was worn, like someone had tried to scratch the name out. Emma returned, flipping through the paperwork. "Grace Elizabeth Carter Mason." Husband was Francis Antonius Carter Scott exhaled. Then, why is the tag different? Charlie was now curled up tightly, one paw draped protectively over the collar. Scott shut the kennel door gently, the mystery digging deeper into his thoughts. He returned to his desk, rifling through Charlie's medical records. Visit notes, checkups, vaccination tags. Something clicked. Charlie had been a patient for 6 years, but judging by his teeth and behavior, he had to be closer to 10. So where had he been before? Why was the tag altered? And what name was trying so hard to be forgotten? Scott grabbed his keys. "I'm heading out," he told Emma and Yara. "If anything comes up, call me." They nodded, used to his sudden bursts of curiosity. Sliding into his car, he punched Grace's address into the GPS. Whatever was going on, it started there, with the family, and a cat that refused to let go of his past. What if Charlie had once been part of something much bigger? What if the name on his collar had been erased on purpose? Sorry for the interruption. Before we dive back into the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us. Thank you. Scott pressed down on the accelerator, his thoughts racing just as fast as the car. He had questions, and he needed answers. When he reached the Carter mansion, the massive estate loomed before him, silent and still. The kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt guarded. He parked and stepped out, heart thudding with anticipation. Approaching the grand front door, he knocked firmly and waited. The door creaked open, but the woman standing there wasn't Grace. "Hi," Scott began, trying to sound casual. "I'm here about Charlie, Grace's cat. I really need to speak with her." The woman tilted her head, a curious expression on her face. "Oh, Mom's not here at the moment," she said, "but maybe I can help?" Scott hesitated. This wasn't what he expected, but maybe it was an opportunity. "Would you mind if I looked at some old photo albums? Maybe from 6 years ago or so. I'm trying to find something about Charlie." Jane blinked, surprised, but didn't seem alarmed. "That's definitely not a usual request," she said with a small laugh. "But okay, let's see what we can find." She stepped aside and Scott entered, his footsteps echoing on the marble floors. The house was opulent, gilded picture frames, polished wood, towering ceilings. But beneath all the elegance, Scott felt something else. Secrets. As Jane disappeared upstairs, Scott wandered into the main hallway. A large oil painting caught his attention. Francis Carter, regal and composed, gazing out from the canvas. His painted eyes seemed to follow Scott across the room. Just beneath the portrait was a photograph, one that froze Scott in place. It was Francis and Grace, smiling warmly, seated with Charlie between them. The cat looked serene, nestled close to them. And around his neck was the collar. Scott leaned in. The metal tag gleamed in the photo, its letters sharper and more legible than they were now. His breath caught. The name on the tag didn't say Francis, didn't say Carter. His pulse spiked. A fresh wave of confusion swept over him. Who had Charlie really belonged to? Before he could dig deeper, footsteps returned from the staircase. Jane held a large photo album, cradled carefully in her arms. Her eyes flicked to the photo Scott had been studying. "Why are you so focused on that one?" she asked. Scott paused, weighing his words. He could lie, deflect, but something told him to trust her. "I've been following Charlie's story," he admitted. "Ever since Francis passed. There's something about the cat that doesn't add up." Jane's expression shifted, softened. A flash of memory crossed her face. "My dad found Charlie after he was hit by a car," she said, voice quieter now. "He was a mess, scared, shaking all the time. Took weeks to calm him down." Scott listened, every word building a new piece of the puzzle. "Why didn't Francis take him to a vet?" Jane sighed, flipping open the album. "He tried, but every time they got near a car, Charlie would bolt, hide under the porch for hours. Eventually, it was just easier to take care of him at home." She turned a few pages. "He's been with us for 6 years now." Scott's brow furrowed. 6 years? That didn't line up with what Scott believed about Charlie's past. Something didn't fit. As they turned more pages, a particular photo made Scott lean in again. It was Charlie, smaller, younger, but unmistakable. And there it was, the same collar. But something stood out. "Has he always had this collar?" Scott asked. Jane narrowed her eyes, thinking back. "Yeah, far as I remember, he has." Scott's thoughts raced. "Do you remember anyone who might have owned him before? Anyone from the neighborhood? Or someone your dad might have mentioned?" Jane shook her head slowly. "Number, we never knew where he came from before my dad found him." They kept flipping through the photo album, page by page, until one image made Scott stop cold. It was older, faded slightly with time, but in the picture, Charlie wore a collar that looked brand new. And unlike the one he had now, this tag was perfectly clear. Scott leaned in, heart thudding. This was it, a real clue. "Can I borrow this?" he asked, pointing to the photo. "It might help me figure something out." Jane hesitated, but then nodded. "Sure." Back at the clinic, Scott placed the photo on the counter in front of Emma and Yara like it was evidence in a case. "Look at the name," he said, tapping the tag in the picture. "Emily Harrington." A quick search pulled up a woman by that name in a nearby town. The timeline lined up exactly. Scott's heart picked up speed as he picked up the phone and dialed her number. "I think I might have found your cat," he said carefully, the words coming slowly. His voice was calm, but under the surface, nerves tugged at every syllable. Would she even believe him? On the other end of the line, Emily froze. Her mind scrambled to catch. Up her pulse echoed in her ears. She stayed silent, trying to read his voice. Was this real? Then softly, almost inaudibly, You think you found Charlie?" Scott nodded instinctively. "I believe so. Would you be willing to come see for yourself?" There was a long pause, but when Emily answered, her voice carried the weight of years. Yes, of course." The drive to the clinic felt dreamlike. Emily couldn't stop the rush of memories, the flyers, the sleepless nights, the hopelessness that never fully went away. She had tried to let go, but she never stopped wondering. Now, suddenly, there was hope again. At the clinic, Scott met her at the entrance and guided her through the hallway, every step slow and deliberate. The familiar scent of antiseptic and fur clung to the air. Her heart beat faster with every footstep. Finally, they stopped in front of a small kennel. "He's in there," Scott said gently. Inside, a gray tabby lay curled into a tight ball. His green eyes flicked up, wary and guarded. Then came the yowl, a sharp, instinctive sound, a mix of fear and defense. Emily's breath caught. That sound. She knew that sound. It was his. Scott stepped aside without a word, giving her the space. Charlie froze mid-cry, ears twitching forward. His pupils widened, locked onto her. Emily hesitated, her hand trembling slightly as she slowly extended it through the bars. No sudden movements, just a silent invitation. Charlie sniffed, still, quiet. A long moment passed, time stretching like a held breath. Then something shifted. His tail flicked, his body relaxed. A low, familiar purr began to build. He stepped forward, leaning into her palm with his forehead, rubbing against her hand in a way that only meant one thing: recognition. A gasp escaped her lips as her fingers slipped into his fur. Tears welled instantly. "I lost him 6 years ago," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We were moving, and then he was just gone. I looked everywhere." Scott stood silently, watching the reunion unfold. Emily's hand moved gently along Charlie's back, as if afraid this moment might disappear if she blinked. The connection between them was undeniable, pure, unbroken by time. But just as the room settled into the stillness of reunion, a new set of footsteps echoed down the hall. Yara appeared in the doorway, her face tight with concern. "Scott," she said quietly, "Grace Carter is here." Scott turned, surprised. "Grace?" Yara nodded. "She looks upset." He exhaled, the moment twisting unexpectedly. He looked at Emily, offered a calm nod. "I'll be right back." He stepped into the front lobby, and there was Grace. She stood near the desk, hands clasped tightly, her posture stiff, as if holding something in. Her eyes were clouded with a mix of grief and unease. For a moment, no one spoke. "I heard you found a cat," Grace said at last, voice barely above a whisper. Scott nodded. "Yes, we did." Grace took a slow breath. Is it Charlie?" Behind him, Emily had followed silently, drawn by the sound of Grace's voice. She stepped forward, just enough for Grace to see her. Their eyes met, and in that instant, without a single word, something unspoken passed between them. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. Two women, sitting across from each other, both holding on to different pieces of the same heartbreak. Emily spoke first, her voice trembling as she recalled the day she lost Charlie, the posters, the calls, the endless waiting, the ache that never fully healed. Grace listened, silent at first, her hand clutching the strap of her purse just a little tighter. Then, quietly, she spoke. She told Emily how she and her late husband had found Charlie wandering the roadside, how he'd been hurt, scared, how they had taken him in, nursing him back to health, and slowly, how he became part of their family. There were no raised voices, no accusations, just two women sharing love for the same animal. Bit by bit, the wall between them crumbled, softened by understanding. Their stories, once separate, slowly began to overlap. Two paths that had unknowingly converged around one small cat. After a long pause, Grace looked down, then up again. A small, wistful smile touched her lips. "I suppose he's always had two families, hasn't he?" Emily blinked, eyes glistening. Then she nodded, slowly. "Yes, I think he has." And in that moment, a decision was made. Not out of obligation, not out of compromise, but out of love. Charlie would have two homes, two families, twice the affection, twice the warmth, twice the care. Scott stood nearby, watching the quiet resolution unfold. A deep, contented breath filled his lungs. Charlie's story had come full circle. He wasn't lost. He was found. Sometimes love isn't about choosing. Sometimes it's about sharing. Did this story touch your heart? Do you agree with the decision to share Charlie between both families? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you love the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who understands the special bond we have with animals. Because sometimes, love doesn't belong to just one person. It belongs to everyone willing to give it. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay kind and have a wonderful day. Subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of resilience and hope. And don't forget to share this video with friends and family. Your support helps us continue this vital work, one life at a time. Let's keep the flame of compassion burning brightly, because together we can make miracles happen. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.